Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth, and I am pleased to be welcoming Mark Littell, our baseball analyst, to the broadcast. And Mark, this visual thing is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It's spot on.
Didn't have to go ahead and take a flight to North Dakota to get up there. Yeah, that's not to say I won't at some point, but right now that's the case. And of course, they have Stuart Hack on the broadcast as well. Stuart, glad to have you back as we do on our Wednesday night as well. So, Mark.
Great to be here.
Great to have you guys on tonight. Looking forward to it. So anyways, Mark, this is a pretty interesting time of the year that you were all too familiar with back in the day in the 1980s when you played in the American League Championship Series. And, of course, I know you played baseball playoffs. What was that feeling like at this time of the year?
Well, that's interesting, actually, that you bring that up, Scott, because I was reminded quite well today that on this date that I had given up the home run to Chambliss. So I guess you might say I had to call my shrink again, and he didn't work, so I had to go another way. And then I just pulled up Facebook again, and I saw another picture, and I said, well, hell with it. I just got to talk to Scott and Stuart tonight, so let's just get on with this and go for it. Yeah, the playoffs are on. That's the unique thing about this time of the year. And the Atlanta Braves are scorching right now, and people said, well, what do you think will happen to the Dodgers? And I said, well, I guess they're going to play in Atlanta now. So I think they wanted to hear if they're going to come back. But, it's a very funny game. Baseball is. It's a game of inches, and anything can happen. The Dodgers have very good pitching, minus Kershaw or not. And then they can put the bat on the ball just as well.
Okay. All right, let's talk about some news that we'll talk about managerial. This is one of the most interesting managerial stories that I've seen in a long time. And then I'm referring to the fact that the Los Angeles Angels granted the Chicago White Sox, they're allowing them to interview Tony LaRussa for their managerial vacancy. The 76-year-old last managed in 2011 when he led the St. Louis Cardinals to a World Series title. By the way, you sport that head very well, Mark. I will tell you right now. He's won 3 championships during his 33-year Hall of Fame career. His 2,728 managerial wins are third all time. So, but that said, okay, Cardinals had it all. What are your thoughts about Tony LaRussa even entertaining the thought of managing since he's already in the Baseball Hall of Fame? You think he's looking to hit that 3,000 wins mark and he's got that itch to do it? He's not that far away if he can manage for a couple of years.
Well, it's I saw Tony a couple of years ago. I actually went to the Italian Stallion dinner of when they were playing that World Classic. And we were in Scottsdale, and I went to a big feed, and Bando and LaRussa and Tommy Lasorda were all at the front table. So you had the Mafia, the whole, kiss your foot thing and with the ring on it, everything. And all these Italian players and their good-looking wives. But, yeah, that's a big thing to come back. How old is Tony? I really don't know right now.
76.
Well, good luck. But anyway, I still think he can probably relate, if he can wheel out, down the gate down there and get onto the dugouts, but it's you got to be on your toes, and he is, but I hope he has a good bench coach, but it probably won't be Dave Duncan at that stage either. Who knows? But might be a little bit of talk about it. Him going back to Chicago and having managed in Oakland and also having managed the Cardinals and many other places as well. And he carries a big name, but it's also a very big responsibility with also the analytics that are coming about. He is an analytics type of guy. He's an intelligent guy. He has his law degree. So he might be in tune for it. That is if he doesn't fall asleep.
Yeah, I would think the analytics, to me, is what probably, when you talk about older managers, how much do they really embrace analytics compared to the gut feeling? That's the biggest question I've often wondered. Stuart?
The thing about Tony, though, is you got to remember, he's an analytics guy. because he had Dave Duncan, and they had a system. They had a real system, but they know spin rates on the balls and things of that nature. That's kind of minutia to them in a little thing. I think it's really minutia to Tony. For somebody pushing out analytics, and you got all the Ivy Leaguers up there, I think the Ivy Leaguers can also stand to learn a little bit themselves, because they're not really in tune as much as you think they are. And that's going to come up also down the line, probably in a couple, 3 years, to where the owner's going to get fed up and say, bullshit. They've had enough of it. So you're seeing a lot of it right now. I mean, who's got the best analytics? The thing about it is if you're sitting there and you're a Cardinal fan, you got to fire all of them. If you're a Yankee fan, you got to fire all the analytic people. Get new analytic people. Well, how long will that go on for? How long? And do the fans really want to put up with it?
Right.
Do they really care? Who cares? Baseball's small compared to the whole process.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't think your millennials really give a shit anyway, to tell you the truth.
No.
I'm in a mood right now because I'm not with the millennials, because they really don't care about anything sport-wise, period. And I know this, and everybody else does too. You can't get them to go to a ball game. All they do is take their Xboxes to a ball game and pick up, and they don't watch it. So who cares?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I mean, to me, analytics I've always been a firm believer, when you manage with your gut feeling and your instincts. And what I love about baseball, Mark, is it's the ultimate chess game is really what it is. Being able to think 3 steps ahead. I don't care what the rules are these days, 3 batter minimum or whatever. To me, the chess match of baseball is what I think makes it undoubtedly the best sport in America. Stuart, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, to me, chess has always been one of my favorites.
I'd be curious who approached who first. Did Tony LaRussa come to the White Sox and say, I'm interested in the vacancy, or did the White Sox come to him and say, are you interested in the vacancy? Because this really came out of left field. He hasn't managed, it'll be 10 years if he manages opening day 2021. He finished up, he won a world championship. So if you're going to go out as a manager, that's the way to go.
Right.
So why ruin something? He's in the Hall of Fame. He's really accomplished so many things that no one has accomplished. So why do that? Is there something inside of him, or is someone trying to talk him into doing it? And the other thing you have to look at too, who knows what COVID's going to be like come spring of 2021.
Right.
76 years old, he's in a high risk category. Does he want to be around all the players? And if they allow fans back in, is that something he wants? He may, his love of baseball may trump all, and he may be hungry to do this. And there is a good, his first managerial job came with the White Sox, and he was like 34 years old when he had it. And, the one thing I was thinking when I saw this story, being a Met fan and trying to look at numbers the way I do. So the last year LaRussa managed the White Sox was 1986. What else happened in 1986? That's the last Mets World Championship. So if he goes back, maybe, I'm just saying, maybe, believe in miracles.
If you do, that's definitely one of them. That's for sure. I guess the only thing I could justify Tony LaRussa even taking this job in Chicago with the White Sox would be unfinished business. Because I can't see any other purpose for it, Mark. I mean, he left there, he won in Oakland, he won St. Louis, and Chicago is where he got his start. I believe was it Gene Lamont and Jim Leland? I know Jim Leland and Tony LaRussa have always been close friends too. But, but to me, unfinished business would be the only thing I could even wonder why he'd even go back to Chicago.
That would be like Joe Torre taking the Met job. Because
I think that's a valid comparison.
You look at Jack McKeon. That was my first manager, And he might be one of the older managers that actually came back and won a World Series on the wing right there with, who was it, the Marlins, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
And, I'm sure that surprised the hell out of Jack, because I know Jack, so he probably ate his cigar. So.
Yeah, like that. I was actually at the clinching game when they beat the San Francisco Giants, and the collision at home plate was unbelievable, and I got dosed with champagne. It was pretty interesting stuff. So, I don't know. Some out there will think about whether Tony LaRussa's motto, unfinished business on the South Side. But that's
interesting, Scott. Who else the White Sox are considering for the open position? They're considering A.J. Hinch.
Yeah, I was about to get to that, but now that you brought it up, why don't we go? Let's segue to it. Okay, Mark, let's talk about whether A.J. Hinch and Alex Cora should get jobs immediately after 1 year off. Do you see those guys in a dugout, one or both of them, next year? What are your thoughts about them?
Well, I'm an older player. I don't know how the younger players would feel, but it'd be probably bad PR.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's always at your back right there. They're both probably, really good people and things of that nature. And I know Alex, but Hinch, he's an analytics guy all the way. And to me, he doesn't let his pitching coach make very many decisions. And he had the horses, and I liked his pitching coach, Brent Strom, quite a bit. And I thought that's one of the reasons he might have lost that last round year before last, rather. Now,
so A.J. Hinch and Alex Cora, you say would be bad PR for any teams that would be interested. I'm sure that they're definitely on a lot of interview lists. I mean,
it's not so much that, it's also the players, what they think deep down.
Right.
I mean, I said deep down.
Right.
Where it really counts on your team chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not talking I'm really fine with that when they're really not.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a lot of fresh blood out there for managers, by the way. And, you don't have to have retreads coming around all the time. So you got to think about that. Somebody says, oh, he was a great manager. Well, he had the horses, by the way, too. He had the money. He had the backing. He probably could have arranged his lineup any way he wanted and still won.
Right.
I mean, good grief. Cardinals did that in the 60s.
Well, I guess what validates your point was, being a Detroit guy like I am, Sparky Anderson had some pretty great teams in the 80s, but when that team started to go downhill and they were losing a lot of players, Sparky Anderson came down to earth and he got really stressed out and retired abruptly and never managed again. So you can have all the great players you want, but when that talent level slacks off, Mark, you're right that I don't care who's managing at that particular point, you're really brought down a couple notches for sure. But so for the most part, A.J. Hinch and Alex Cora are guys, even though they won World Series, you still don't think they would be good for the game, at least immediately?
I'm not a general manager. That's me thinking as a player.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I could see Cora going back to Boston since there's an opening there. He was, the fans seemed to love him before he got implicated in this. I think management liked him. He did win a world championship there, whether that's tainted or not, who knows. I could see him going back to Boston. And the White Sox job, the White Sox are a pretty good team. They were a playoff team this year. So anyone coming in, it's not going to be a rebuilding issue there. They're going to be expecting to win. And if they view A.J. Hinch as a winner, then, maybe they do bring him in. Someone like Carlos Beltran, I think, is going to have a lot of difficulty getting a job because that Mets job would have been his first managerial job. And he got implicated when he was playing for Houston. I think he's going to find a harder time getting a job in baseball doing anything. Maybe one day he can get a minor league managing job if the minor leagues ever come back to some semblance of what they were. Right. Maybe he does that and has to start over, just build himself up. But I see the other two who have major league success on their resumes getting a job at some point in the major leagues.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. I would think they should, but then again, who knows? Depends on what the frame of mind the general manager is in. Does this guy feel that, they've learned from what has happened and how desperate they are to win right away? Are these the best guys out there? So just food for thought. Let's talk about Toronto Blue Jays right-handed pitcher Matt Shoemaker, who believes that COVID-19 could impact the way free agents view playing in Canada during the 2001 campaign. He talks about travel, safety restrictions, and they played in Buffalo for the Buffalo Blue Jays. So it seems, right, Mark? Because they ain't playing Toronto. So is there any, what are your thoughts about what Matt Shoemaker said? That they want to play in Canada?
Yeah, COVID has had an impact on everything. It certainly has on baseball and sport. There's no secret to that. And it's almost a play it by ear as it goes, because there's no vaccine or no anything that's the magic potion here that's going to, end this tomorrow, or not even maybe by January or February when spring training starts of next year. Right. And Stuart made a good point, about COVID. And, that is certainly something to pay attention to. And it is on a daily basis as well for the whole world. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he was talking about Nashville and Montreal coming back. And I said, why would they? I said, Nashville is Tennessee's a football state. Montreal, they don't even know what baseball is. I mean, because one, I was up in Montreal when, they don't draw, and they try to, put people in Olympic Stadium. And, I got lost. I ended up 9 stories down underneath it one time. Pushed the wrong button. I said, good grief. So, but Nashville, I was there as a pitching coordinator, and they didn't draw. I mean, I don't know what's so hot about Nashville right now, but Nashville's put a few more people in there. But you've got Atlanta on the south end right there, not very far away. Charlotte is right there just as well. I know people are making a push for Nashville all of a sudden, but there's too many other things out there. And then to get back to your subject matter of the Toronto thing with the pitcher, I would have to think that Stuart feels the same way because he brought it up about the COVID. So,
yeah, we don't know what next spring brings, and maybe Toronto's going to be playing in Buffalo again.
It makes you wonder about that, doesn't it? Yeah, you kind of wonder about that. That's for sure. The whole thing. Now, Mark, knowing that we finally made it to the playoffs, and for a while it didn't look very good at the beginning, whether we'd see the end of the season, are you surprised that we're seeing the end of the season, knowing that it looked bleak for a long time? The Miami Marlins, who we'll talk about shortly, had their fair share of outbreaks, parallels obviously the Tennessee Titans. But, for a while you had to wonder whether we would see the end of this season.
I think it is what it is. And, you had a commissioner that just kept pushing. He might have done some things that people did not like, but he also has actually pushed as well. So there's a positive right there to see baseball under the playoffs and a World Series right down the pike coming shortly. So, you have to think about that as well. And I think you have to have these people in there to be positive about, businesses coming back and things of that nature, and not sitting idle. Because, people were talking, and I know Jack Flaherty he wanted to have a platform. Well, all he needs to do is just pitch and not have a platform.
Right.
Because he had a great year last year, and he had an okay year this year, but had he not had the platform, I think he would have done much better. So it's kind of like, to me, shut up and pitch. So, you're only 24 years old. You don't know anything about anything, really. Just go out there and pitch. I know when I was 24, all I wanted to do is get people out. I didn't want to have a platform about anything. Maybe hunting some birds and fishing, but, I'm not of the caliber now or then to go out there and say, can I run for president? So anyway.
yeah, sports and platforms don't interest me one bit.
No.
They don't. I don't care what platform you have. The reason you made it to where you're at is because you played the game between the lines. Nobody, frankly, gives a darn what you say outside the lines, which is probably the major reason I don't watch much NBA, because I'm sick and tired of hearing these guys talk too much and let your actions on the floor, because that's how you got to this point. That's why you're all making a nice living. Thank you very much. Nobody cares. Everybody has opinions, and everybody has fill in the blank, right, Mark?
Well,
and I'm more concerned about what you do on the field. That's, after all, if you're in the minor league, nobody's going to care about your opinions. Why should they in the major leagues?
No, that's right.
So, I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I think that, but I understand Schumacher's concern, and Stuart makes a good point. Could they be playing in Buffalo next year if it does become a travel problem? I know that the Blue Jays did a good job, bringing that ballpark up to decent standards to be able to make it through the year. But again, you're right, this COVID-19.
You have to worry about, too, the fan base in Toronto, because if they end up in Buffalo in 2021, that's 2 seasons that they have no team to follow. And then say they come back in 2022, you have kids who get into the game maybe 6, 7 years old. And if they don't have a team to necessarily root for, what happens now they're 9 or so? Do they look something else or another sport or something like that? And that could hurt the fan base in Toronto. Remember, Montreal probably lost their team due to the 1994 players' strike, because they had a really good shot of making a deep run into the playoffs in the World Series. But because there were no playoffs in the World Series, they had reached a point where that was it, and their window had closed, and they didn't really make a major run again. And as a result, they're now in Washington.
You know what, Stuart? They didn't probably lose that team. They did lose that team. Ernie Harwell and I used to talk about that, and Mark knows Ernie all too well. And Ernie and I asked him, did the 94 players strike doom Montreal? I said, absolutely. That was the best team that they had assembled, and they didn't get to the postseason. And everybody, if they Google up the 1994 Montreal Expos, will tell you they had, I believe John Wetland was on that team. I think Pedro Martinez, just to name a couple of people. It wasn't Gary Carter on it. And the list goes on and on. So, yeah, the 1994 players strike, yeah. And it's not like Mark here on the other end is overly endorsing Montreal to get Major League Baseball. You've been outspoken on this broadcast before that they don't deserve it anyways. And Rick Curdy is probably out there in Charlotte smiling from one end to the other, embracing the Charlotte, because he promotes the daylights out of it anyway. So, those are
it's hard to look at all. You got Tampa Bay and the Marlins, and and you see. I remember Oakland used to be the bad boys of not the pull or the drawing, and they probably still are. I don't check into it that much, but the Cardinals drawing 42,000 average in 19. Coming back from a COVID experience and players wanting a platform is going to be a little bit tough.
Yeah, well, I think you're right about that. Well, you talked about the Miami Marlins. Let's talk about them. They rallied around the outbreak, and they managed to make it to the playoffs and even beat the Cubs as well. They were 31-29. Don Mattingly did undoubtedly one of the best managing jobs I've ever seen of keeping that clubhouse the most even-keeled person on the planet. Do you know Don Mattingly at all, Mark? Have you ever gotten to know him? Because I'll tell you, my working with him, I've enjoyed working with Don this year, and I definitely believe he should make a strong case for Manager of the Year, rallying this group under the most adverse circumstances on the planet. It was a pretty good year by their standards here in Miami.
Well, he's a good old Midwest boy. I've shook his hand, but I'm never sat down to really have any kind of conversation. But he's pretty even-keeled.
Yeah.
He has good work ethic, and he expects it. And I'm sure he has a feel for his players. And that's great that he's taken some young players, which, is probably better than what he had out with the Dodgers. Because, I don't know, the Dodgers look like they're hard to manage for some reason. They got so many opinions, and they're in the Bollywood out there, and everything else. And but the youth, they have a little bit more hunger for the game, you know. And if you got some of those starlight studs out there performing, and you put the right mark on them, and they keep performing for you, then you probably will do some fantastic things.
Yeah, Mattingly's from Evansville, Indiana. You know, I believe they actually went ahead and I think named a street after him in front of the ballpark. But Don Mattingly, you're right. He is even keeled, and you know he expects his guys to work hard, real hard, and he'll go ahead and have your back all day long.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Stuart, I mean, Marlins. Do you think Mattingly deserves Manager of the Year? How would you describe the Marlins season in a nutshell?
I think he does deserve Manager of the Year. I mean, I think they benefited from a 60-game schedule, though, because had they played a full season, they may have started off well, but with a lot of young teams, they'll tend to falter at the end. So I don't think they would have been a playoff team for 162 games. That being said, they definitely would have improved over last year. And I think because they had big game experience this year, they had playoff experience, that's going to benefit them going into next year for a full season. And maybe they come to fruition maybe a year earlier than the plan. Just because of this season, they got all these young players got valuable experience in big games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mark, I guess when you get playoff experience young, it bodes well for you down the road, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, you know, but and then the payroll, you got to pay for that 2 or 3 years down the line too, with the young pups. And then you hope you can hold on to them, and you know the ownership and the management can advise them to try to stay with that club and as a winner anyway.
Yeah, this team had 61. They had 61 players on the roster, 174 roster moves during COVID. I mean, and to be able to throw baseballs into a mattress and find different ways to loosen themselves in a hotel, to me, is like watching Sylvester Stallone in the Rocky movie punch meat to try to train for a fight with Apollo Creed. You talk about the most unorthodox ways to stay active, and yet when you came back, I mean, that's just too surreal.
That's junkyard training, you know. That's what you got to do.
Yeah. All right, well, let's talk about the playoffs. Up until today, anyways, the Atlanta Braves were undefeated going in. They swept Cincinnati 2-0. I don't even think Cincinnati scored a run in that series. And then they beat the Miami Marlins 3-0. And, of course, they were leading the Dodgers 2-0. All of a sudden, Stuart, I don't know what the last score was.
I got it. So they're in the bottom of the fourth. It's the Dodgers 15, Atlanta 1.
Oh,
wow.
Are they going to stop that for the mercy rule, or are they going to just play it out?
They'll play it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so Mark, what are your thoughts about the Atlanta Braves? Now, listen, they had a 7-0 lead, I think, yesterday, and hung on to win 8-7. So the Dodgers bats finally woke up over at Globe Life Field. So, everybody, I had the Dodgers going to the World Series, but like you say, Mark, they're a tough team to really, really figure out. So I don't know what to think of the Dodgers.
Well, you know, it's another day tomorrow in baseball, and the slate is clean when the first pitch is thrown. So 15 runs today or whatever it ends up, you know, that really doesn't shake you as a player. You're not going to go out there and go, oh, my God, you know, the Dodgers have really arrived. No, it's not like that as a professional. You know, you're going to go out there and do your job, and you know, you don't even think about yesterday.
Right.
It's not like it's a big deal. You know, so you just go over and do this thing you're supposed to do.
Well, you know, it's amazing how you say that. There were a lot of lopsided games in Major League Baseball during this season. I mean, I've never seen so many lopsided. So what do you attribute that to?
Pitching.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Young guys coming up, you know, maybe not. You know, some of the older guys breaking down. You had a lot of breakdowns this year too. You had a few major breakdown, let's put it that way. But your pitching was going to suffer regardless. And, you know, they had to have that. I don't even know what the numbers are. Stuart knows this stuff. But where they had to have 30 people or 28 people or whatever it was. They needed every pitcher in the whole damn organization, regardless. Just breakdown, hit. Line drive. Kill the infield. My gosh, take all the married men off the infield, back up 2 steps, whatever. So
yeah, it's too surreal. But you're right. No matter how bad Atlanta gets beaten tonight, it is only one loss in the loss column. And although Clayton Kershaw is supposed to be pitching in Game 4, I know he had back spasms. So should the Dodgers expect to pull it out, this series could be square at 2. Even though Atlanta appears to have coasted their way all the way up to this particular point. But everybody knows that the road to a championship is certainly not going to be easy.
But Scott, the game is not over yet. See, you've already admitted defeat here. It's the 4th inning. It's only 15-1. I've seen some big scores before now and comebacks. That would be a major comeback, but the game's not over. It's not over until it's over, right? What Yogi said.
But I think in this case, because Atlanta has a 2-game lead, they may come with the mindset, all right, we're just going to give it to them and we'll come back tomorrow. So it's not a desperation per se where it's 1-1 or something like that. They've won the first 2 games. Let them have their fun today. We'll get them tomorrow. Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about with this series, because the Dodgers have underachieved in the postseason the last few years. Does Dave Roberts need to win a World Series to keep his job? Even in a 60-game season like this,
Yes.
Yes. Because the Dodgers had the best record. If they lose this series to Atlanta, or even if they somehow win it and then lose to either Tampa Bay, well, probably Tampa Bay in the World Series, do the Dodgers say, all right, it's time to make a change, or do they give them another chance for a 162-game schedule?
I'd say probably Wars welcome out, because, they always say, I don't know this, but fans always say this, coaches say this, he made a bad decision here, made a bad decision here. That's hindsight. But, if you've got the horses, maybe you should, think about lining those horses up better out of the chute. And, the thing about Kershaw, he's a great pitcher, but he breaks down too. And he's just one pitcher. And, there's a lot of pitchers out there that are pretty good. And Buehler, threw the ball well the other night. He lost. Will he come back and throw well this next time? I'm sure he will. He's what, 25 years old, maybe 24. And, he's a stud. He's the stud of the staff, by the way. Kershaw's older and he's starting to wear down a little bit. He threw a very good ball game two games ago, I believe. Yeah.
First round, and then he was okay in the next round.
Right. He dominated the very first round. And that was really the first time he's ever really dominated where you go, wow, who's this guy? That's Clayton Kershaw. If you take everything else he'd done in all the playoffs, you'd said, well, okay. But he did stand out. And you're right, it's the 60-game, thing right there. And hitters get down. They go into slumps. They go into daily slumps sometimes and they pop right back out of it. Pitchers go into slumps, they pop right back out of it. So sometimes it's hard to throw a strike. Next day you're throwing them all over the place, and you're getting people out. And you're wondering how you get people out with some of the crap you're throwing up there. You're throwing balls down the middle of the plate and you're thinking, you swung through that and you're scratching your head. Why didn't he hit that ball out? Are you kidding me?
Clayton Kershaw was a gem against the Milwaukee Brewers. I haven't heard anything from him since, so we're getting him on track. But here's a guy who, with all the talent that he has, I think by now a lot of us are kind of surprised he hasn't sniffed champagne yet. So, all right, so let's go on to the New York Yankees, another team a lot of people thought were going to get to the World Series, but the Tampa Bay Rays fixed that situation, beating them at 3-2. So. Obviously, the Rays lead their series 3-0 against the Houston Astros, who entered the postseason 29 up, 31 down. First of all, what are your thoughts about the Tampa Bay Rays? I mean, this team here, they amaze the living daylights out of me, Mark.
Yeah, they're for real, both hitting and pitching wise, but they also have a very good defense. And that's one thing that you have to put at the top. A lot of people, they push that under the table sometimes. Everybody wants to talk about hitting. Oh, this is pitching, but they have a very, very good defense. And that's to be noted. That's to be noted.
Yeah, I heard today that Kevin Cash hits ground balls to his infielders, and he does them at full speed, which is why these guys are sharp. Let me tell you, Kevin Cash to me is one of the most unbelievable, underrated managers out there, and he's doing it in a market with unquestionably the lowest payroll. I mean, what are your thoughts about Cash and the organization? You know, obviously they have to worry about drawing any fans this year because nobody was, and yet they play in the worst stadium on the planet in the worst area, and yet they're the one team that if you put them in any other market, they would sell out the place. But the Rays in general are a model for development, but they're very underappreciated. But what are your thoughts about Don Manley told me during a Marlins media availability that the Rays are the model organization that we're all trying to copy.
Mm-hmm. You know what I was thinking with we talked about the Blue Jay fan base. So the Rays, let's say they win the World Championship this year. Next year, we're allowing fans back in the park. Do you think they see a surge in Tampa coming off a World Championship, or do you think there'll still be a lot of disinterest there? Do you think it helps the franchise going forward with the World Championship this year?
Personally, I think it really helps the city, obviously, because you're bringing in so much revenue. But the point of being World Series, Tampa, that's a hard stadium to fill. You've got a lot of older people, just keeling over, there. So it's tough, and it's a tough place to fill. But if you look at just trying to the Cash thing and bringing these guys to the top, they probably want to prove a lot of people wrong. And, they're trying to say, hey, look, Tampa, look at us. We're winning, we're young, we're winning, or whoever we are. We don't have a big payroll. And they're going out there and doing it, and they like to do that. Whereas on the other side of the coin, you've got the Yankees with the big payroll, and they're hitting rock bottom. Well, sure, the Yankees will always do that because they have the media. Whereas if you look at Tampa, Stuart, I think on that side of the coin, the media is not there in Florida like it is up in Boston and LA and the West Coast, East Coast thing. So,
that's true. And you deal with a big media mecca market that you have in New York versus one. And I know it here with Miami when I realized the amount of people I was dealing with not only the broadcasters, but the writers. They're certainly a little bit easier on a manager than they would be if you have 9 million of them up in the New York area. So you talk about the Yankees. What went wrong with them? We had a guest on here, Stuart and I, K.R. Lombardia, says that the Yankees are made out of glass. I actually enjoy the analogy, but to some extent, when you look at the amount of injuries that they had, the expectations, I guess Hal Steinbrenner said that Aaron Boone will be back next year, so he won't be a casualty to unemployment. But what went wrong with the Yankees?
I think you said it, injuries. They lost Stanton for a significant amount of time. They lost Judge for a significant amount of time. They had some injuries in their pitching staff, and they just couldn't overcome it. They have depth, but they just couldn't overcome this. And I think some of it falls on the general manager. Some of the personnel decisions. You bring in a guy like Stanton, that was a horrible contract. Miami was lucky to get rid of him. So they bring him in. I think he had one solid season for the Yankees, but he's never on the field. So how, they're bringing in these guys, and it's almost like they're trying to do the mentality of the 1970s Yankees that Mark remembers so well, bringing the high-paid players. But those guys played. They didn't get hurt. or if they were hurt, they still played. These guys, they're sitting out with injuries. You have like Aaron Judge. They didn't think his injury, well, they were saying his injury wouldn't be that serious, and all of a sudden he's missing a good chunk of the season. So they have to look at who they're bringing in, if they want to be successful going forward. And I think Aaron Boone probably was safe this year because of the 60-game schedule. I think anything less than a World Series next year, assuming 162 games, you'll see a new manager in the Bronx in 2022.
I've often wondered whether or not, Mark, whether firing Joe Girardi was a huge mistake since he won a championship.
Well, I don't know. He may have hinted that he might want to have lead, and maybe he wore out a welcome that way as well. I don't know if you'll ever know the truth, to the whole scheme. But to get back to what Stuart was talking about the injuries, but this guy didn't have an injury. I think he's worn his welcome out as Chapman. He's thrown 2 long balls 2 years in a row, and he doesn't have a real conscience, or he doesn't really care, And he's just, okay, I made my money. Okay, I'm going to go out tonight. And, I gave up a home run tonight, and bingo. But I'd be pissed, tell you the truth, if I was on that team. To look at a closer, because your closer is really a big dog, and there's other guys out there that can close too. There's another 1 or 2 guys out there with big dynamic arms. Chapman's very known for giving up the long ball. Matter of fact, he's given up 2 in a row, back to back before. And I was a little surprised. Here's a guy with a great arm, a pretty good slider, I guess, okay slider, but he's pretty straight and he makes mistakes, and come see, come saw. So your teammates deep down might not be, as interested in him as you think they are. So,
well, amazingly enough, when they won that World Series with the Cubs, Joe Madden knew he was going to be free agent, so he didn't care how many innings he threw him. We gave up a king's ransom to get this guy, and right. Joe Madden had that attitude. I don't care if you throw your arm off or not. I'm looking to snap that 100-year-plus drought, and Joe Madden definitely got what he got out of him, didn't he?
Oh, I don't know why he was crying. He was crying. It showed him crying down there on the end of the bench during the rain delay. And I said, what are you crying for? You should be happier in hell. Good grief. You're in the World Series. You're going to go back out there and nail it. And he made his way through it and he nailed it, thank goodness. So that's the way it is.
But with all the injuries that the Yankees had, and they faced the Rays in the playoffs, okay, you had your 2 top. They had an opportunity to advance, but was Tampa really that much better of a team? That obviously we know because they advanced. I get that. But when you look on paper, again, we only look on paper versus what you produce, the Yankees squandered a major opportunity against a team that was their nemesis in the regular season, but they had a chance to go. To me, when you're in the postseason, you can take regular season records, Mark, as you know, and throw them out and flush them out, throw them out the window, because when you get to the postseason, it's a different animal.
Right, it is. It's a totally different animal. And people have asked me. They say, "Do you know who's going to win the next game on this one?" I said, "No. You can have your best pitcher against a mediocre pitcher, and that guy's going to throw a gem tonight, and the other guy's going to get hammered, and the other team's going to score some runs, and that's just the way the ball rolls. That's why baseball is a great game, folks. Right. It really is. That's why it's a great game." And,
what are your thoughts about no days off whatsoever during the championship series? They're going to play them all in a row. They don't care. They're determined to go ahead and get them in this 1 week window, although Tampa may not have much longer to go if they get rid of the Astros. I think the Tampa Bay Rays beating the Houston Astros, to me, a lot of people are rooting for it because they want to get rid of the so-called cheaters, right? And a team that was under 500. But playing a lot of games in a row, does that make a big difference at this particular point? Or are these guys just acclimated to playing every day, even though you're in the postseason?
I think we were very acclimated to playing every day. These guys, I don't know that. Different breed of cat here. So I don't think it's a big deal to play every day. Matter of fact, it kind of keeps you on edge and keeps you sharp. And, you go through 25 games in spring training, you go through 162, you go through your playoffs, you go get into the World Series. That's what it's all about. You got adrenaline going nuts, hey, let's play baseball. You got plenty of time after the last pitch to go hunting, fishing, and have a platform if you want, So, que sera, sera.
Yeah, chalk it up for the millennials, I guess, Mark, the one thing we all like to kick around. I'm with you. I struggle with millennials. We have old school values, so to speak. So I agree. I mean, you know what? You have all off season, do what you've got to do.
I can say that only because I'm older.
I think this year they got used to playing every day. The teams got used to it. And in the playoffs, I like the fact that teams are playing every day in the playoffs. And there's a little bit of strategy. So Tampa Bay, Tampa's up 3-0. They could try and wrap up the series and sweep Houston, and then they can rest. Because, the Dodger-Braves series, if that goes 5, 6, or even 7 games, Tampa's getting some rest there, and then they'll go right into the World Series after a day or so. So there's a certain mentality to maybe go for the kill if you're Tampa, to just try and knock off the Astros and finish it, and then you could get some rest if that's what they want.
Well, you get some rest, you reset your pitching staff. But Mark, what about that theory that the team gets too much time off between series? Do they lose their edge too? I remember you talk about the St. Louis Cardinals and the Detroit Tigers recently. The Tigers, had some time off, but the Cardinals beat the Tigers in 5 games. And I'm sure there's a lot of other examples. That's the one that stands out the top of my head. Do teams lose their edge when they have too much time off?
Well, yeah, that's a good point, because actually they kind of do. And you have to have a manager that pushes you. I know Whitey, sometimes we were pushed. And when you start calculating who's going to pitch, you do it from basically around the 20th of the month and backwards. So you might to set that rotation up to how it's going to work and how it's going to fall. And then I remember Whitey when I was throwing well, and good, when I was closing, he would say, "Hey, how much steam you got in you right now? You want an inning? You want an inning tonight?" Things of that nature.
Really?
Well, if you need me, yeah. Or whatever. But he's trying to say, do you need a little breather? You don't want to give a closer too much of a breather. We like to work a lot. But if you sit out there and you give him 3 or 4 days off, he gets stale. And he's not as sharp. He's not as sharp at all. We like to throw the baseball and stay. Matter of fact, I'll tell you something. I was better on the 3rd day throwing in a row rather than, skipping 2 days.
Were you really?
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, I threw one time 4 days in a row. Matter of fact, Whitey told me in Boston, he said, "Hey, you're not pitching today." And the funny thing about that is it was a close game. He calls down, and I always pitch well against Boston, in Boston for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, I was down there eating hot dogs and trading baseballs and everything for hot dogs. And he calls down the 7th inning and put Airhead on the phone. So I get on the phone, "Hey, how you feel today?" I said, "I feel good." He said, "Hey, I want you to get loose and see how you feel. Might use you here." I said, "Well, hang up my glove or my cup." And he said, "It's coming around through the stands because you didn't go along the line right there because it was part of the baseball field almost. And the bullpen was in right field." Right. So here's this little bat boy coming around with my glove and I'm using somebody else's glove. And I turned away from the stands. And when it gets there, I put my cup in and got my glove now, get loose. And, one of the guys from the bullpen said, "How close are you?" I said, 3 pitches away. He says, "You got the next hitter."
That's funny.
So there you go.
So
have fun.
So let's look at these 2 series in general. Okay, let's talk about the Tampa Bay Rays and the Houston Astros. Well, size them up. How long is this one going to go? How many games before Tampa gets rid of Houston? Unless the Astros come up with a miraculous comeback, which I don't see happening here.
I think it ends tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It could be fast. It could be fast business.
Okay. 4 or 5 max. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the Braves Dodgers? This one here has 6-7 games written all over it. The Dodgers, when the Dodgers pulled it, even though it's not over until it's over, I like the way you brought that up. But if this one's over tonight, then you have game 4, then you're probably with Clayton Kershaw. If he's sharp, then all of a sudden you have yourself the makings of a long series. Agree?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think game 4 is the key game. If Kershaw comes back and he evens the series, and I'm assuming that the Dodgers hang on tonight, if he evens the series, then it becomes a best out of 3. Oh, yeah. And then, anything can happen there. And then if he proves that he's healthy, who's to say he can't come in relief in a potential game 7? Because that's all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing, too, is that's your bullpen day. So you would be available, right, Stuart?
Yeah.
You would be available, and for sure. But it's an interesting business of how the manager goes about using his pitching staff. That's a big deal.
Well,
that's what it's all about right now.
When you look at 2 potential matchups for the World Series, if you have Tampa and Atlanta, which is a very interesting organization, 2 younger clubs is one thing. But if you end up with Tampa and the Dodgers, you have the Andrew Friedman role. Andrew Friedman's the one who built the culture for the Tampa Bay Rays, and then he ends up going to the Dodgers with a checkbook that's pretty deep. So both of those could be very interesting series no matter how they turn out. I think the Atlanta Braves are built for the long haul. I really do, judging by what I'm seeing. And the Dodgers, like you say, are in win-now mode. Otherwise, Dave Roberts finds himself out of a job soon enough. Mm-hmm. And the Tampa Bay Rays, to me, right now, as we mentioned, they are the model of how a lot of organizations build. It's not how much money you spend on talent. It's how well you use your draft capital and whether you're spending your money wisely. Because think about this, Mark. Charlie Morton, once upon a time, played for the Houston Astros. And where's he at? He's in Tampa. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other veterans that, they may not be making Jed Clampett money compared to some of these other superstars, but they're making a nice living at a much different environment and seem to be pretty happy to me.
Big thing is they're getting to play. That's the thing. You sit out there and you look at chemistry, and it might not be working well for somebody on a certain team. The Cardinals have traded away a lot of real good talent, and you look at what's going on right there, and a lot of those guys, there's about 5 or 6 guys that are in these playoffs right now that used to be Cardinals, and they're young players. So it makes a difference sometimes when you go to a different club and they're trying to put a trade together. And I think management's catching a little bit of hell right now. I'm not giving management hell. It's just the way baseball is sometimes. Right. But, and it's just that you have to understand that these players come over there and they get the opportunity to play, and all of a sudden they get the opportunity to play for a winning team, on a winning team. And they're part of it. They're part of that chemistry.
Well, we had a couple of guys in Miami that really, Corey Dickerson fit in real well here. Jesus Aguilar did. Miguel Rojas was with Don Mattingly out in Los Angeles and bought into the culture. So, when you have these veteran players that just kind of fit in, Starling Marte, who they acquired. So you bring in some veterans, and with these younger guys, Brandon Kinsler's another guy, then you're right. All they're looking for is an opportunity to play, and they felt disrespected in their previous stop. So you want to make a prediction, Mark, for the World Series matchup, and then during next week during the World Series we'll be able to do this bad boy again and dig deeper into the World Series a little bit more. You want to give us a matchup?
I'll make that in the sixth game of the World Series. I'll tell you who's going to win.
Well, how about the World?
There's no predictions. You never know in the game of baseball. I'm really into that part because people sit there and they say, well, what do you think about this? Or I don't know. there's so many things that can happen. Like Stuart said, he had COVID. How many players could get COVID between now and next week?
That's true. You got me there. Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't ask you to predict the winner. You want to at least predict the matchup?
Well, I'd like to see Atlanta and Tampa Bay. That would be pretty cool because you've got, a little bit of an oddball situation right there.
Okay.
And because Atlanta hadn't been at it, and Atlanta's got some really young players.
Right.
And I think that, they've done a very good job over Tampa Bay, obviously. So that would be – that's kind of an obvious, but it's not either because the Dodgers are going to swing – they could swing this whole thing in wide open too. So.
Hey, that's good enough for me. Stuart, where are you going with it?
I mean, I guess you have to go with Tampa Bay. I mean, the beginning of this season, assuming that they were going to play, my World Series teams were Minnesota and Washington. So take that as you may. What I'm about to say probably holds no credence whatsoever. Tampa Bay will come out of the American League. I'd be shocked if Houston won 4 straight. And, I think Atlanta is the better team in the National League. I think they'll come out and they'll play Tampa Bay. It should be a pretty good World Series. I think a close World Series, 6 or 7 games. It's sort of a toss-up. I would probably, if I had to make a pick right now, I would just go Atlanta.
And for whatever my prognostication skills are, okay, and that's for whatever they are. Okay, I preface what I just said here. Okay, I actually had the Yankees and the Dodgers, and I was wearing my Back to the Future cap there in 1981 when that matchup happened. So I don't know. Was I too obvious, or I don't know? That's what I had. Take it for whatever it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been an interesting matchup, the Astros and the Dodgers.
Yep, for sure.
It would have been It would have been a rematch of 2017. I think it would have been a great get for television.
Well, it would have been minus the bongo bats, too.
Right.
Well, I think the absence of Justin Verlander due to our injury certainly prevented this thing from happening. They needed their other horse. They had Zach Greinke, but Justin Verlander, they definitely could have used him down the stretch. So, well, we'll keep it interesting for next week when we talk about the World Series. But meanwhile, we'll let our baseball analyst go ahead and do some promotions. He's got a lot to talk about. And now we get to visually see what Mark Littell can talk about. So, Mark, the floor is yours.
Well, I tell you what, I'm just going to make this really short and sweet because all you got to go to is grab my name off of that little screen right there and put a .com right behind it. And the thing about it is, this is my first book. It's called On the Eighth Day, God Made Baseball. And the second book is Country Boy, Conveniently Wild. And so you've got 2 books and a third book coming out hopefully shortly called What's Up Ramrod. So anyway, you have that. The second thing I want to mention is my Nutty Buddy. It's the new mask. See, it's the new mask. So everybody should order this. Oh, no, I'm really sorry. This is the protective cup that I invented, and I've won 5 awards over this thing, folks, and I'm an idiot. And the funny thing is it's anatomically correct, and I have 5 sizes, and those 5 sizes are hammer, boss, hog, trophy, and, of course, Mongo. But it is the best cup on the market, and I will take shots at 90 miles an hour to actually stand behind my product. Enough said.
I don't know. You don't have to say a lot. I think the visuals helped you on this one. And thankfully, next Wednesday when we can do this again, you can talk about it again. How's that sound? I don't care. I love watching this stuff. Hey, do me a favor. Put that book up so I can see it again. Both your books up. You were moving faster than you throw fastballs, pal.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. All right, here. Well, give one. There we go. There's one. On the 8th day, God made baseball. Beautiful. Okay, the grip. And now go ahead. Put the other one. Country Boy, Conveniently Wild.
Yeah.
And I like to think every time we're on this broadcast, we're definitely going conveniently wild with our analysis.
Of course.
And I got to tell you something about that St. Louis Cardinals hat, Mark. When I went to Southfield Lathrop High School, it was Southfield Lathrop, and they ended up using the STL on their and we were the Chargers. So it was an easy way without having to go ahead and spend the money to create an SL cap. So it's just a little something now that I can see the Cardinals at. And you know what? In fact, Candy, do me a favor. Go over there. I'm going to show you my Palm Beach Cardinals hat, okay? Because I ain't wearing one here. But my wife is going to go over there and get that hat right there. It's a red one, so I feel like that we're lean red. Tell me what you think of this hat, Mark?
Oh, yeah. You're close. It's nice. I like it because it's got the faded Tampa sun on there, so it's good.
Yeah, well, you know.
Looking good. Yeah,
I figured that it was a nice gift from the Cardinals last year when I was out there doing some stuff on the broadcast. You know, I mean, hey, listen, I got a Jupiter Hammerheads hat too, and I got the Palm Beach Cardinals. So I tell you what, next week when we do the broadcast, I'm going to wear that hat for the entire show.
There you go.
Fair enough. All right, Stuart, go ahead and let people know how they get a hold of you, and then I'll give everybody my grocery list of contact information. Go ahead,
Stuart. I guess to me, being conveniently wild would be preparing their tax return without a cup. I'm Stuart Hack, Hack Tax and Accounting Services in Palm Beach County, Wellington, Florida. Stuart at hacktaxandaccounting.com is my email. You can reach me by phone, 214-6171 in the 561 area code. And I'm on the web. It's not as simple as Mark's. I probably should have thought this out better. hacktaxandaccounting.com.
That's good.
The home of the jock tax, which is one of the few things I learned in the tax business. Stuart Hack, I joke around about it. It's a jock tax, so I don't know. All right, so if you folks want to listen to the audio version of the Sports Exchange, I give you ways to do it through Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. If I talk too fast, well, I don't know. Do I talk faster than pitchers throw a fastball? I don't care, but I'll say it again and throw a changeup and make it a little bit slower. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. As far as social media is concerned, you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune Gets It Done. And we have a YouTube channel for which you folks are watching this broadcast on our YouTube channel. That is South Florida Tribune. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, it doesn't cost you anything. It just costs you a little time listening to us shoot the breeze anyways. And we expect you to get entertained and informed, etc. ... Okay. Now our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. We actually have a section on there for Motor City Monitor, where since I'm from the Metro Detroit area, we have a lot of Detroit stuff on there, but we have our media distribution partners as well as our columnists contribute. And then, of course, we have all the broadcasts on the WSAN drop down. Our email address is southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or you can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth. So lots of different ways to get a hold of me. If you have any questions for the show, suggestions, whatever, feel free to give me a shout. We'll get your name on there, whatever. So Mark Littell, it's been a blast having you on again, and we're looking forward to having you on next week for the World Series. We have a date?
You betcha.
All right, Stuart.
We're on.
All right. Well, I'm glad to have you on the broadcast tonight, and we'll see what the World Series matchups there, so we don't have to make any predictions. So, well, stay tuned for the next edition of the Sports Exchange with Stuart Hack, Mark Littell, and the Motor City Madmouth. Good night, everybody, and be safe from COVID, and do the necessary things that you had to say. I don't want to read any statistics for all the wrong reasons. There aren't any Billy Beans that are going to give you the Moneyball version of this whole thing. Right. This is one thing we don't need to have. So good night, everybody. We'll catch you next week on the Sports Exchange with Scott, Stuart, and Mark.
Hey.
Night.